We're going to go ahead and get started. So if everyone can go ahead and take your seats. Give me 1 second. Okay. There we go. Okay, welcome everyone to the 2025 Indiana Community and Urban Forestry Symposium. Woo! Thanks so much for coming, especially those of you that had kind of a longer drive. I know Bloomington isn't quite the middle of the state, but it's pretty close, and we had this sweet venue. So I want to say thank you to Haskell Smith with the Bloomington Parks and Rec for helping us get this venue. My name's Reischl Stenger. I'm with the Indiana IDNR Community and Urban Forestry Program, and I planned this event, and I'm so glad you guys are here. So I've been with the DNR since June 2023, and so we've been putting this on, well, I've been putting this on for the last few years. And the event is meant to help bring people together at the end of the year to share about our wins and losses throughout the year, learn from the experts to help us advocate for and protect our community trees, and foster connection within our community. I want to give a quick shout out to the Education and Events Committee working group within the Indiana Community Forestry Council for all their time and effort helping to plan this event. You guys all rock. Also, I want to give a special thanks to our sponsors for this event because it is truly sponsorships that has kept this event, accessible for the past few years. This is the first time that, we're charging since I've been here. So specifically, we offered like 5 levels, and all our sponsors were at 3 or 4. So at level 3, we have the Indiana Arborist Association, who is also acting as our fiscal agent, and they have a table in the back, so please do go say hello to them. We also have Accelerating Indiana Municipalities, or AIM, Davie Resources Group, and Indiana Nursery and Landscape Association, who also has a table in the back. And then at level 4, we have Bartlett Tree Experts, which we're going to have someone from Bartlett actually speaking tomorrow, so we're very grateful for that. And if you guys didn't know, some housekeeping things, the bathroom is down that way. You have to go down all the way down the hall, and you'll see it. And now, I guess I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Mincy, who's the chair of the Indiana Community Forestry Council. At least from a DNR perspective, we're very grateful for INCFC's guidance and assistance in increasing our capacity and our reach throughout the state. And as the chair, Sarah has done a wonderful job keeping momentum in the group. So I'll pass it off to you. And
get that video pulled up for me? That would be awesome. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. Can you hear me okay? All right, good. I'm so excited to be here today. A few of my students from Urban Forest Management at Indiana University are also here. Super excited to be here, and I'm glad that they're here. The rest of the students in my class are glad that I gave them the day off because of the symposium. So, but I'm really happy to be representing the Community Forestry Council. In case you're not aware, INCFC, as the advisory council to the state Community and Urban Forestry Program, is critical. The advisory council is required of every state in order to get federal pass-through funds. Those funds support the Community and Urban Forestry Program, and they also support many of the communities that you come from with grants that come out of Community and Urban Forestry Office. So this is your council, the Community Forestry Council, and it's made up of a great group of folks who have been working really hard as our board of directors over the last year. I'm pleased to be working with them. And I'm inviting all of you right now to our end of the year board of directors meeting, which will be the very last session tomorrow. If you're not a board of director, you are still very much welcome to attend that meeting and learn more about what we've been up to this year, supporting CUF and supporting the work of all of you doing urban forest management. We're also looking for new folks to step up and serve on the board, and so you are certainly welcome to nominate yourself or nominate someone else if you feel like that is a call that you would like to heed at this point. So I just had a couple comments I wanted to make beyond letting you know about the Indiana Community Forestry Council. It has been a really crazy year for us in urban forestry, right? I mean, we thought it was a doozy when we got $1.5 billion from the feds, right? And then this year, in February, all of a sudden, everything was challenged. That money looked like it might be pulled back, right? And even the president's budget came out and said nothing for state and private forestry. And that was really disturbing. You know, thankfully, it looks like we have retained that IRA money, most of us, and are still doing the good work across our communities, planting trees. And it looks like the House and the Senate appropriations bills continue to support us and did not follow the president's budget. So those are all good things at the federal level for us. At the state level, we know that our state budget challenges many of our local governments' financial situations. And often the trope is when local budgets get tight, it's sustainability and the environment that get cut first. So we have a lot of work to do in this space to continue to demonstrate the vital role that urban forests offer to us to be resilient to all of the environmental changes and social changes that we are facing, right? A lot of that good work at the local level is happening with local nonprofit organizations. I see lots of folks here from those kinds of organizations, Keep Indianapolis Beautiful over here, and Canopy Bloomington, which is our local urban forestry organization here in Bloomington. And I thought, just for a little bit of inspiration, since we're sitting in Bloomington, it might be nice for you to see a little video about what Canopy Bloomington has been doing in partnership with the City of Bloomington and other sponsors in our community to help grow canopy cover in Bloomington. So let's see if we can get this. Turn up the volume.
Canopy's number one objective is to grow the canopy cover in Bloomington in a way that involves deeply our community. So we're community powered for trees in Bloomington.
It's just really great seeing people come together. I'm running around to every group and I get to hear people talking, yes, about trees, but also just like
Okay, yay, right? So Canopy Bloomington is funded in part by a grant from CUF. It is funded in part by a grant from the City of Bloomington. It's funded by several people in here who are private donors. We partner with lots of different organizations. And I know we wouldn't be able to do our work at Canopy Bloomington without the nursery folks who are also sitting in this room, who are providing excellent tree stock, and just all of you, because we can't do this work alone. We turn to one another to get advice. And I know each of you come from communities where you have organizations that are making similar impacts in your community with regard to the urban forest. So it's really an exciting time to be together, to recognize that we all have a role to play in growing canopy cover across the state of Indiana. We have an exciting agenda. I want to say a huge thank you to Reischl for getting this wonderful event pulled together. I would love it if we could all give her a hand right now. She is the lead on all of this. Thank you so much, Reischl, for making this possible. Our agenda today, we are looking at updates from CUF. First of all, we're going to talk a little about urban forest preservation. We're going to focus on nurseries a little bit today. Tomorrow, we have best management practices on species selection. How do we support our urban forests through ordinances, marketing and communication, and funding? And we'll end the day, like I said, with the final board of directors meeting for the Indiana Community Forestry Council. So just a wonderful agenda. Glad you're here. And if you all want to get involved with INCFC, please let me know. I'm happy to chat with anybody about our role and how you can get involved. Thanks.
Okay. So we're now going to hear from Jacob Rose, who December marks his 3-year work anniversary as the program director for Community Urban Forestry. So kudos, Jacob. And I'm going to present. There we go. Okay, there you go. I'll pass it off to you, Jacob.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me in the back? Is that okay? Okay. So my name is Jacob Rose. I'm the Community and Urban Forestry Director for the Indiana DNR. Just going to give a quick recap today of kind of what our program has done over the past year. Our team is myself and Reischl. Reischl is an outreach coordinator. She leads events like this, our tree stewards programs, and she'll get into that later in the presentation. We did have 2 people leave our program this year. Is Mads here today yet? No. Nope. So we had Mads Golian. She was our urban forestry specialist. And then we had another Madeline that we added this summer, our summer intern. Mad's position, as a lot of you met her and worked with her, because of some state funding cuts, her position was eliminated after she left. Her position was funded through Inflation Reduction Act funding grant that we got. All of our IRA grants that we awarded, they're still going strong. There's no indication that any of those are going away, but her position was eliminated. She wasn't let go. She wasn't fired. She left on her own for a position with the city of Indianapolis. And then we have Madeline Brinker. She joined us for the summer. She's a student at the University of Cincinnati. She helped with a lot of things over the summer. She went back and monitored some of our past tree plantings that we funded through our grants, measured some of our big trees that for our big tree register, and then helped digitize some of our big tree pamphlets, which I'll go over here in just a second. We just wrapped up our 2025 grant proposal window. We were able to award over $300,000 to over 221 recipients. One of my favorite statistics about this year is 8 out of the 21 recipients were first-time grant recipients, which I think is an amazing number, that we have 8 brand new communities participating in our program. 3 of them came from a new grant program called Small Town Big Trees, where communities with a population of 10,000 or lower were eligible to apply. That was great to see a lot of interest from. And then we also had funding for communities to treat ash trees, and we were able to award 3 applications for that, and there's approximately 150 ash trees that are going to be treated throughout communities in Indiana, which there are still viable large ash trees that are healthy enough to be treated in our communities. A big topic this year has been program funding, so I just wanted to give a brief overlook of kind of what our funding has looked like over the years. So the graph on the left is our fundings from 2009 up until 2025, our federal allocation that we have received from the Forest Service. You can kind of see it gradually increasing each year up until 2025. It was lower because of everything going on with the federal funds. As Sarah mentioned earlier, we do feel confident that our funding will at least return to normal, if not increase, but that's still to be determined. And on the right is a graph of the communities that our program has assisted from 2009 up until 2025. And the reason that is important is because part of our funding that we receive from the Forest Service is directly tied to the communities that we assist each year. So the more communities we assist each year, the more federal funding we receive. So when you registered today, there's a sheet at the table to put down your community that you're from. That helps us track the communities that we assist. So events like this, the more communities that we bring in, the more funding we can provide, the more grants we can provide, the more events like this we can put on, the more tree steward events that we can put on. So we very much appreciate you coming to these events. As I mentioned, our Big Tree Register, we now have a national champion in Indiana. The swamp chestnut oak is in Jennings County. We announced that this summer. We had the governor come out, and it was good because it brings recognition not only to our program but to the state as well. And as I mentioned earlier, our intern Madeline, she helped digitize every Big Tree Register booklet from 1974 up until the present, when we stopped producing physical copies in 2015. So if you're interested in a digital copy of these, let me know. We don't have enough physical copies to give to everybody, but we do have digital copies that we can send to everyone. Now, the Big Tree Register isn't just a list of all of the largest trees in the state. Thanks to research done by Dr. Deb Hilbert and Eric North, who will be here tomorrow, and many other people, they have created a formula that you can input your Big Tree Register numbers to determine right-of-way planting widths to reduce infrastructure damage. So if you're trying to determine how large your right-of-way needs to be or how far away from a driveway or a road is, we have put in all of our big tree numbers into that formula that we will be developing into an official guidance document. So yes, the Big Tree Register is a fun program, but we are now finding ways to put that to use within our program. We will have much more information about that later, but that's something that you can look forward in the future. Rachel.
Okay, and I'm the outreach coordinator, so I wanted to talk about the programs that I've put on and kind of give you an idea of how I choose to do my outreach programs, where I choose, and that sort of a thing. So a big factor in how I choose my outreach programs is is it regionally spaced out, and are there willing partners that have capacity to help with planning things like workshops? So Tree Stewards, if you're not familiar, is a workshop that I put on 3 throughout the year. They're for the general public to learn about all things tree care and get people kind of into their communities. And so you can see since 2023, I've had them all throughout the state. And I'm trying to continue spreading them out so that you can be within like an hour and come to a tree steward. So next year we're going to be having in the spring a tree steward in South Bend and in New Albany. This past year we had one in Evansville, Muncie, and Goshen. And so those were very successful. So and Goshen's in the back, hello. So if you represent a community or, I don't know, if you have a property like an arboretum and you want to have a tree steward, you're welcome to, approach me, and I'm very open to partnerships, and especially if you think you represent a part of the state that hasn't gotten a good tree steward. Come talk to me. And then also a big part of outreach is our 5th grade Arbor Day poster contest. And so I wanted to show kind of the geographic impact. We are still looking for more schools. Like each year since I've done it, we've had 17 schools. So if you are directly connected with 5th grade teachers, I would love to talk to you, or if you can get out about our poster contest. It's a great way to engage with students. This year's theme is trees and pollinators make perfect partners. So yes, please do participate, or talk to me if you know 5th grade teachers. And I do a lot of other stuff as well. So if you have events that you put on that you'd like me to come table at, I have a limited ability to do that. But just to show some special things I did this year, I organized with Clark State Forest to go to Junior Achievement's Career Fair down in Louisville, and we talked to over 300 students. We had foresters showing all different people from all different backgrounds how to use a compass. It was absolutely fantastic. So if you're in the career fair realm, please do come talk to me. We also had a fairgrounds planting. If you guys have been to the state fairgrounds, and I do guest speaker sessions as well. And this is our contact information. So if you're not connected with us, this is everything. Did you have something you want to add?
I can't believe I forgot to mention, but we do have our state forester with us today, Jack Seifert. He is in the back getting something to eat. Jack, if you want to wave to everybody, if you want to make Jack feel at home with the urban forestry crowd. So, can't forget to mention him. So, yep.
Perfect. Yes, thank you, Jack, for coming. Okay, how are we doing on time? So it is 12:30. Will you take a look at the agenda? How long is the Mentimeter supposed to last till? Thank you very much. We'll have lots of time to discuss later. So, for the next 3 talks, we're going to be focusing on topics related to urban forest preservation. First up, we have Joe Hansen, the Tree Preservation Officer for the Village of Wilette, Illinois, who will speak about Wilette's tree preservation ordinance and enforcement process. So Joe, and by the way, this room's very echoey, so people talking in the back, you can hear it up here, just so you know. Okay, so Joe Hansen is an ISA certified arborist, urban forest professional, tree risk assessment qualified, and holds numerous certifications through the Tree Care Industry Association, including Certified Tree Care Safety Professional, or CTSP. Joe is, as I mentioned, the tree preservation officer for the Village of Wilette, which I have to say is an awesome job title, tree preservation officer. And so he serves as the president of the Illinois Arborists Association Board of Directors, the chair of the Urban and Community Forestry Committee on the Illinois Forestry Development Council, and is a task specialist on the Illinois Urban Forest Strike Team. And, wow, and the host and producer of the Municipal Arborist podcast, which I heard great things about. So please give a warm welcome to Joe here. Yes. Yep. It's this red button there.
Sweet, thanks. Hello, everybody. Ooh, here we go. She was a little shorter than me. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, thank you for having me. Every time I get to leave Illinois, I'm pleased. But I will say we are doing great work there, and it sounds like you guys are doing excellent work here, too. Thank you so much for having me. I'm here to talk about tree preservation ordinances on private property. It can be a touchy subject for some property owners and some government agencies as well. But I'm here to talk about how we do it in Wilmette, and this is something that came from the community. It wasn't something that government drummed up on their own. Essentially, developers were coming in and clear-cutting historic properties. The village was incorporated about 150 years ago and is filled with a ton of beautiful, large swamp white oaks, bur oaks, et cetera. Great community. Let's see, okay. Here we go. Okay. So Village of Wilmette is located just north of Chicago, North Shore community, so a little bit more affluent money-wise. Just under 30,000 residents, 5 square miles, 18,000 parkway trees, 41% canopy cover. And to put that in perspective, the general Chicago region is floating around 22-ish% for like all of the collar counties. So we're doing a little bit better than them. But it's not because the ordinance has been in place for very long. This was just put in place in 2023 with 22 with amendments in 23. And we're actually working on some more amendments right now, which hopefully will get into place next year. The ordinance covers 2 types of trees, protected trees and heritage trees. Looks like we lost the animation during the crossover. It's okay. So we have protected trees and heritage trees. A protected tree, and we're talking again about trees on private property. So we have separate protections for publicly owned trees, which is the base level standard to be eligible to be a Tree City USA, for example. So protected trees cover trees 6-inch DBH or greater, and heritage trees cover oaks and hickories over 20-inch and any other tree over 20 inches. Does that sound pretty excessive, or does it sound just about right? You can shout it out, it's okay. I'm informal. Too much, too little? Don't be shy, I can take it. I didn't write the ordinance. So it's pretty comprehensive. So essentially, if you're a property owner in Wilmette and you own a tree over 6-inch DBH and you want to remove it for any reason, you need a permit. We do have trees that are not considered heritage trees. So these would be, we have an invasive list, and you'll notice that Bradford pear is not on that list currently, but it will be. We were waiting for it to get on the Illinois list, which it just got on the Illinois list, but that's not going to go into effect, I think, until 2028 for Illinois nurseries there. We also have an ornamental list, and the reason we have this ornamental list is when we measure multi-stem trees in our ordinance, we only count stems over 6-inch in diameter. We're running into problems with like older crab apples that were becoming heritage trees. Now, they are heritage due to their age and their condition is great. However, the board and myself as well thought that it was a little too restrictive for ornamental type trees. And then we have undesirable trees, Austrian pine, blue spruce, Callery pear, Osage orange, Siberian elm, willow. And those are types of trees which, ecologically we didn't feel also counted as a heritage trees. So we wanted them to be less restrictive, but they're still considered protected trees. And this is a very like 30,000 foot view of this legislation, by the way. We have some exceptions, some vegetation that we do not consider trees at all, even though they are, would be arborvitae, Japanese maple, sumac, and yew. The arborvitae can get kind of touchy because like most of us are not going to see arbs that are gigantic, but in Wilmette, we actually do have very large northern white cedar arborvitae that have grown over, 50 or 100 years that unfortunately can be removed, without any kind of replacement requirements. And by the way, that's the goal of an ordinance like this, is to try to protect and retain healthy trees so we can get those compounded benefits out of those trees. So in Wilmette, we estimate unscientifically that only 20% or less of the trees in the village are located on the right-of-way. So those are publicly owned trees. That means 80% or more are located on private property. So that's part of the reason why we want to protect those resources. If all those 80% of trees went away and we were left with trees in the right-of-way, it would look pretty ugly, and we would also not be experiencing those benefits. So essentially, again, someone applies for a permit to remove one of these trees. Any fees or replacement requirements are waived if a tree is dead, dying, diseased, hazardous, or invasive. This disease definition is something that we amended in 2023 because we were having problems where people were saying like, my blue spruce has, rhizophoria needle cast and I need to remove it. It's like, yeah, one, I understand it's not the greatest tree for our region. Two, yeah, it does have that, but it's not something that's going to kill the tree immediately. Or like silver maple with tar spot or something like that. It's not something that's going to kill the tree. So we want to avoid those arguments about what is a disease by defining it as a severe disease or pest that is known to cause or is causing the death of a tree, like emerald ash borer, Dutch elm disease, etc. We define a hazardous tree as any tree or tree part that is damaging an existing structure or utility, or essentially anything that an arborist would consider to be a quote unquote hazard. So something with some kind of major structural defects, cracks, decay, poor form, things like that. And then we also went ahead and defined a healthy tree as any tree that is not dead, dying, diseased, or hazardous. So it was important to actually go into the weeds a little bit and define what's healthy, what's diseased, et cetera, to avoid some of those arguments. And since, again, the village that I work for is more affluent, so to put it in perspective, an average home, a lot might be 50 feet by 180 feet. That's a standard parcel size. They're buying a house for $2 million, tearing it down and building a $3.5 million house. And a lot of the residents that live in the town are very litigious because they have money and they're attorneys. So it's important that we properly define some of these terms. We'll allow you to remove any protected tree, so non-heritage tree, as long as replacement requirements or permit fees are met. However, heritage trees are much more restrictive, and their permitted removals are dependent on the location of where the tree is located. And that's all determined by the zoning ordinance, another separate portion of the ordinance. So basically what we're looking at here, this is from straight out of our zoning ordinance. Every kind of municipality has setbacks, right? So you have the lines, I probably can't see that from far in the back, but look at this front yard here. That line would be the front yard setback, right? And then we have side yard setbacks and rear yard setback. Everything in the middle where that pink or orange or whatever color that is, that's what we define as the buildable area. That is the least restrictive part of your private property, and it exists in some form or fashion in basically every municipality across the country. You're allowed to build your home in that area. You typically have less restrictions when it's concerning like impervious surface, so like adding patios, decks, pools, things like that. So we treat trees the same way. So if you have a heritage tree that's located in that buildable area, you will be permitted to remove it. But if you have a heritage tree located in those outside of those setbacks, there's different restrictions. Oh man, I'm bummed out this animation doesn't quite work. But essentially, if there's no construction taking place and it's located in one of those required yards outside of the setback, you have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to request a variation. And then after that, you have to go to the Village Board for their final approval, where they essentially amend the ordinance just for you and that specific tree. And then if it's approved, you're subject to replacement requirements, which are pretty strict, but we're trying to amend them to make them even more restrictive. So we'll talk about those replacement requirements in a moment. But essentially, what we're going to do is I'll walk you kind of through that healthy heritage tree removal process. Again, this is for healthy trees. So if you have a dead heritage tree or a hazardous heritage tree, none of this applies. We're going to issue a no-fee permit. You don't have to pay anything, but we're still going to go out and check. And that's the other thing too, is these permits, they're not processed over the counter. I travel around the country and do a lot of different speaking and on webinars. I meet a lot of different people who are in similar roles as me. And a lot of these ordinances are processed over the counter, which means someone's coming in with an application that maybe a certified arborist signs and says, I'm removing an 18-inch silver maple because it's dead. And an arborist looks at it and says, okay, that's cool, yeah, makes sense. And then they issue a permit. In Wilmette, what we do is we actually go out and we field verify everything. So we're not inspecting the tree to tell the person the tree is safe. We're not providing advice on the tree just because we don't want to get tangled in the liability of that. And then also it's kind of a conflict of interest because we're trying to enforce an ordinance, but we're comparing the condition of the tree to the conditions of the ordinance, field verifying everything. And one thing that I will tell you is we get a lot of stuff wrong as certified arborists filling out paperwork. That's a whole nother topic. But let's talk about healthy heritage tree removals. First question, is construction taking place? If the answer is no, then we're going to look at where's the tree located. If it's in that buildable area again, then the answer is yes, you can remove the tree. You have to do a neighbor notification to all adjacent properties. There's like a 10-day period. And then they have to pay the permit fees and plant the required trees. The answer is no construction, but it's in a required yard. Then again, we go through that appeals process. If there is construction, we can administratively approve heritage trees for removal if they're within those required side yards, if there's construction taking place. And that's only if a hardship or practical difficulty exists because the existing tree makes it impossible or impracticable to perform the construction in size and configuration allowed by right on a lot of similar size. That's really important to key in on there. Allowed by right on a lot of similar size. What that's basically saying is, if you have equal size properties, one property has absolutely no trees and you're allowed to build your home in that buildable area, the other lot of equal size has a ton of trees, but it has some healthy heritage trees, let's say in the required side yard right next to where they're going to be digging for a foundation, then we're going to allow you to remove that tree to build that house because we don't want to be overly restrictive on private property rights. We still want people to build the house on that lot. Unfortunately, we're going to lose a tree or two, but that's where we find the balance in private property rights and tree retention. This is the replacement schedule. Basically, it's $75 for each tree removed, healthy tree removed. And protected trees are either 2 to 4 replacements, and essentially each replacement tree you could also pay a $500 fee in lieu of replacing for each of those trees. Now that's if there's not any space on the property to plant those trees. So like I said, if the lot's 50 by 160 or 180 feet, and you have a big 4,000 foot house and a big pool in the back, and a 2.5 or 3 car garage and a bunch of flat work and patio stuff, there might not be room to plant 4 trees, or in the heritage tree case, inch for inch. So if you're moving a 40-inch whatever, it's pretty unreasonable to expect to plant 40 trees back onto that property. So in those cases, you are allowed to pay a fee in lieu. In all cases, we're getting some sort of tree back onto that property. So if there's a spot for a tree, we're going to make them plant a tree or 2 or whatever the number is onto the property, and then we allow them to pay the fee in lieu for the remainder. Now, the $125 a diameter inch fee in lieu of planting is actually low for a north suburb of Chicago. A lot of our surrounding communities are at like anywhere from $250 to $700 per inch. So this is one of the things that we're trying to amend, because if you're building a $3 million house and you're putting in, I'm not exaggerating, two $30,000 fridges, a $10,000 tree permit means nothing to you, right? So we want people to be more thoughtful in their design, not so much and that doesn't mean the part where we're talking about digging the foundation right next to a tree, but their overall design of everything. We want them to be more thoughtful of it. So if we put higher replacement fees on things, it'll make people try to be more thoughtful in the design, hopefully. These required replacement trees need to be from the village approved species list, must be minimum 1.5 inch caliper. They have to go back onto the property where the trees were removed from. So that means you can't put it in our right of way or our parkway or any other park. You can't donate them to your neighbor. They have to go back onto the property where the tree was removed. And then those replacement trees automatically receive protected status. So even though they're planted at 1.5 inch caliper, they're not 6 inch DBH trees yet, but now they're protected and you need a permit to remove them. How do I know that they're there? Because I have them all geospatially located in GIS, as well as all the removals too. I have a ton of data for tree removals. Now that fee in lieu money that we generate, we take that and we invest that back into the private property. So we apply up to $500 back to private property owners who wish to plant a tree on private property. And that's like an application process that we go through with them. They fill out an application, tell me what they want to plant, show me where they want to plant it, and I work with them on not so much not as a full-time consultant, but if they have a good idea but it needs a little tweaking, I'll work with them on it. And we're basically just making sure that we're investing in trees that have the highest success of survivability, the same way that we would for planting a parkway tree. We don't want to give people money to plant trees that are going to be topped out by the utility later, or that are like directly next to a house and are not going to grow to their full potential. And then it also provides a good debate or argument tool for people who are saying, why do you want to take all of this money? Where do you're just taking this money and going into the general fund with it? It's like, yes, but we're also got a chunk of money that we're giving back into private property. And this is another thing that I want to up this to $1,000. The reason is all the data that I've collected over the past several years shows that folks planting trees by contractors through our program are spending anywhere between $500 and $1,200 per tree planted. So, and I only have $20,000 to spend every year, at least as it is now, and I don't spend it because people are not planting the trees. So I want to give them more money so we can get some more trees in the ground. Now, this is the big topic here, is not just retaining trees on private property because someone doesn't like cleaning leaves and they want to cut the tree down. The biggest thing, and this is the biggest hole I see in a lot of ordinances, is the restrictions or thoughtfulness that can go into place for trees, protecting trees during construction. In Wilmette, I review every single permit that comes through where shovel touches the dirt. So if you're anything from a sidewalk, exact replacement, remove and replace, all the way up to demolitions, new homes, new commercial structures, whatever it is. But to be able to review those plans effectively and do my job appropriately and work with the folks who are trying to do these developments, there's certain information that we need to see. And there's certain things that they have to do. So the first is tree protection fence required for the whole CRZ. This is pretty standard, 1 foot radius for each 1 inch DBH of tree. Fence must be minimum 4 foot tall, installed on driven posts. We can also require temporary construction paths and other mitigation things. And then we also do a pre-construction inspection. So we're not just telling people, show us on your plans and then go do it. We actually don't issue the permit until they do it. And then I go out to the site to verify that they've done it as the plans show, or as I've told them or worked with them on what would work and what would not work. On their plans, let's say they're doing a single family new development or an addition or even a garage. They have to have a tree survey that's completed by a certified arborist that basically shows tree species, DBH, condition, form, any kind of notes they want to add to it, location of the protection fence, location of that critical root zone, description of any other kind of procedures they're going to do, root pruning, any kind of treatments they're going to do, et cetera, location, shape, spatial arrangement of all temporary and permanent driveways, parking areas, storage areas, access to the site, huge. Any location of all your new utility services, so your sanitary, your gas, your electric, your water, all of that stuff, we have to see it. The limits of land disturbing activities and all of your existing and proposed grading. And all this has to be shown on your civil plans. So essentially, a surveyor goes out, surveys the property, shoots all the contours. They typically will give that to the consulting arborist who goes out, does the tree survey. The arborist gives that back to the civil engineer who prepares the plans and shows all of this on the plans. If we don't get this on the plans, then we tell them they have to. We need revisions. And just for a single family new home, we're typically going through about 3 or 4 sets of revisions. So even once I have all of the information, I have the ability within the confines of the ordinance to request them to make changes, because we also will not issue a permit for damage of a tree. So we don't want them to do something to damage a tree to the effect that it will cause it to likely die or become structurally unstable as a result of the construction. Penalties for essentially removing a tree or damaging a tree without a permit is anywhere from $50 to $7,500 per offense, plus all the requirements if a permit would have been issued. So it gets up there. And then we have a separate clause in there for publicly owned trees where we can essentially assess the monetary value at industry standards plus all the replacement costs. And in those cases, we would hire a consultant to have them do those evaluations. Yeah, so that's a good question. She asked what the parameters of the range are, and the answer is staff does not determine fines. Fines are determined by an administrative adjudication judge at an administrative adjudication hearing. So in Illinois, it's probably similar in Indiana too. An administrative adjudication hearing can take place. It's essentially municipal court. So if you're a home rule community, you can run your own municipal court for lower level municipal offenses, and a third party attorney acts as a judge. So essentially what would happen in a case if there is a violation, I would issue a citation to the offender, and then I would work with the village attorney to try to come to a settlement, so a settlement offer. So dependent on the severity of the case, we would offer them a settlement. Let's just say whatever, a fine amount plus a certain amount of trees planted. If they accept it, we have them sign it, pay the fine, plant the trees, et cetera. If they don't accept it, then we'll go to trial by judge at the adjudication. And at that point, the judge hears it, determines, if they're at fault, if they're guilty, et cetera, and then determines an appropriate fine. So that's the answer to your question. And that is to make sure that there is no impartial preconceived notions like, I think this contractor's an a-hole. I've had a lot of problems with him, so I'm going to give him the biggest fine. We want to try to avoid that. So we have a third party take care of that. So all of this being said, the important stuff that I want to drive home here in the next 8 minutes is, that's probably hard to see. I apologize, but if you can see it, that's what a tree's root system looks like, right? Can you see it? It's hard to see, but it's basically a mirror image of what the canopy would be. So the real answer is no. All the animations are gone. This is what a tree's root system really looks like, right? All the important roots of the tree are going to be located in your top 10 to 18 inches of soil, depending on tree species, soil type, et cetera. Typically in most ordinances, tree protected areas, tree root zone, critical root zone, TPZ, however you want to define it, typically only covers up to the drip line of the tree. We want to think past that drip line. So the reason is we want to avoid soil compaction from trucks and equipment going in and out. And believe it or not, even sidewalks can have a major impact potentially on a tree, depending on how much of the root system you're impacting. Site access is huge. Huge, huge, huge. This is one of the biggest things that we should always be looking at when we're reviewing plans. Don't think about someone digging near a tree. Think about how they're getting to where they're going. Think about where they're going to be storing their materials. That's really important. This is an example that I found the previous village that I worked at, or city that I worked at, had an ordinance, but we didn't do pre-construction inspections. So this was someone who was demoing a pool in a backyard, and they put down these boards to do what? Was it to protect the tree? No. It was to protect the grass. They didn't want to restore everything. I mean, But then removing a pool doesn't seem like that invasive, but you're driving, a skid steer that weighs potentially 18 or 20,000 pounds empty back and forth 200 times to get everything out, and then another 200 times to get all the soil back in to fill it. That could have a major impact, and on this tree, you can see it affected at least, a quarter or a third of that root system of that tree. Here's another perfect example. In Wilmette and in my previous city, the entire parkway, so the entire right-of-way needs tree protection fence, whether there's a tree there or not. So this is an instance where they didn't do that. All access needs to take place either in an alley or through a pre-approved entrance or an existing driveway, for example. In this instance, they had a fence up, they moved it, and they're going out and back. This is the exact same home at the end of this, and I go by for a final inspection and they have all their equipment out there. Why is that bad? Who said something? Yeah, soil compaction. We want to plant a tree there, right? So that's why we protect the parkway, even if there's not any trees present. We want to plant a tree there at some point. This is an example of a successful story. This is in Wilmette. So we have some trees on the back here on the left. Oh, you can see. I don't know if you can see the pointer anyways, but on the left side of that, it's out of the picture, but there's an alley there. And that's where we want the access, is through the alley. On the back of this house, they're going to be doing an addition, but they need access. So we're not going to make them cut down trees so they can get access through the alley, so we provide them with temporary access across the parkway. And in this case, it was plywood with 12 inches of wood chips, and then we have them treat each of those parkway trees with a paclybutrazol, or plant growth regulator. And then that's tied to their final inspection then too. So then when I go out for final inspections at the end of that project, I need to see an invoice from a tree care company that they perform the treatment, at what rate, at what date, and then if they didn't, they have to do it. They won't get their final inspection. This is a bad example of a sidewalk construction. Sorry all the animations are not working, but for some reason they went ahead and were put in the sidewalk. This is unpermitted. This one was a little more complicated. That's a hackberry tree that's growing through the fence there. That's actually a jointly owned tree. So the neighbor was pretty upset that this occurred, called me out there to an active site, and I found this. Hopefully all of us know, but if not, you don't want to tear the roots. You want to cut the root system like shown in the arrow. I'm not sure why they tore everything else and left that one cut, but that's how they did it. One major consideration you want to think about is if you're ever reviewing plans and you're looking at a house or some sort of structure, you don't just want to consider where that line is at, where that wall or foundation is going to be. You need to consider the overdig. So the overdig is the area where they're going to be in there working. They might be installing some kind of stormwater infrastructure down there. Sometimes there's shoring there, but that can be anywhere from typically it's going to be a minimum 4 feet, but it can go out up to 6 or 10 feet. It really depends on the excavator. It depends on the soil type. There's also certain, we're not going to get in the weeds, but there's certain OSHA standards for when they require shoring, at what slope that is supposed to be to keep it from falling in. Basically, that's just, when you're building a foundation, there's 2 types of pours. There's a footing and then a foundation wall. But you need room to get in there to get those forms in. So that's the whole purpose of the overdig. This is an example of same picture that I showed before, but from the other side of the fence. Basically, everything is collapsing in to a pretty severe degree. So you can see that's probably 10 inches of soil that's completely collapsed into the neighboring property. Now that arborvitae is not the end of the world, but when you get into situations like this one, this can be the end of the world for these trees. So the photo on the left, the house on the left, in the photo on the left, is a house that's going to be demolished and then a new home built. And then the photo on the right is just looking from another angle. I think they're 18 to 22 inch Norway maples. They're both jointly owned trees, which means both property owners retain 50-50 ownership of those trees. So in order to remove these trees, we need permission from both property owners before we'll issue a permit. So during my plan review process, I was like, no way, you're not going to be, you can't be digging there due to how close you're going to be. And you can see in this photo here, I mean, we're 2 feet away from one major structural root, right? So if you're going to put a house back in that exact spot and then you consider a 4 to 6 foot overdig, those trees are not going to make it. Not only are they likely going to die, most importantly, they've lost all structural stability, right? Now, you may argue, well, Joe, the root system's not there. There's likely a basement there, so you're not really losing so much root system. But it's something that we're not going to gamble with. So in this instance, we told them hire certified arborists qualified in track to do an assessment on both of these trees. And if they can put in writing that these trees are going to remain healthy and structurally stable and reference some kind of ANSI standard, some kind of research, then we'll consider it. Well, of course, the arborist came back and said, no, you have to remove these trees. Problem is the neighbor who also jointly owned that tree did not want to remove those trees. So what do you think happened? Do you think, did they build a house? Yeah. They did build a house. But an interesting thing happened. So this is pretty unique, and fortunately the animations are gone, but essentially what we had them do, and what they actually came up with this on their own. This is a very creative builder. So what they did is they retained the green portion of that existing foundation, and then that gray line that you see there is where the new foundation was placed. So they actually made the house smaller, so they were able to move it over and not affect their setback requirements. So they lost a bunch of square footage. So they shrunk the house down, moved it over, and essentially that foundation wall ended up being their shoring. And then once they were all said and done with it, I allowed them to cut off the top 1 foot of that foundation wall. So they went on the inside, saw cut horizontally so they can peel it back, and is not invasive at all to the root system of those trees. After that happened, then the neighbor FOIA requested us all the documents and assessments and stuff. But I was working with the neighbor the whole time. That's the other important thing is if you're running an ordinance like this, I'm 1 minute over, but if you're running an ordinance like this, it's important to work with people, meet people in the middle, talk to all parties involved, and you want to be an advocate, but you don't want to be like out there like a protester either, right? Because we want to wave the flag, but again, we want to meet folks in the middle to make it all happen. This is a QR code for a tree ordinance administration workshop I run at the Morton Arboretum once a year. The next one's going to be in February. It's 6.5 hours long. It is incredibly intensive. We actually go through building plans and go through all the nuts and bolts and weeds of tree preservation ordinances. So what you saw was just kind of like a sample of that, and I wish I could have spent more time talking about it, but I'm out of time. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, talk to me at a later date.
Okay, so next up we are going to have Rachel Comte from Urban Canopy Works and Chad Reischl from the city of Jeffersonville talking about trees from a city planner's perspective and how smaller communities may be able to preserve and maintain their tree canopy. So as an introduction, Rachel Comte leads Urban Canopy Works, a woman-owned business dedicated to advancing trees and the tree canopy in urban and developed areas. As both an ISA board-certified master arborist with a tree risk assessment qualification and an urban planner, Rachel has a foot in both worlds of technical arboriculture and urban planning, and is considered a leading authority in urban forestry. And just as a heads up, Rachel's first career began in marketing and communications, where she even worked as a special projects officer for the White House. And then after that, she switched to landscape design. So she's going to actually, we're very grateful. She's going to have 2 different presentations, and she's going to talk to us about marketing tomorrow. And then our second speaker for this presentation is Chad Reischl, the Director of Planning for the City of Jeffersonville. He received his Master's of Urban and Regional Planning from the University of Colorado, Denver in 2011, with an emphasis in urban placemaking and community development. With a 20-plus career that spans disciplines of architecture, landscape design, urban forestry, and planning, Chad brings a comprehensive design-based vision to the communities he works with. Yes, and in his current position, he has helped add over 800 trees to parks and public spaces in Jeffersonville. So that's really awesome. We're very glad to have you both, and I'll let you guys come on up. And then, yes.
So, good afternoon. I'm excited to be here with Reischl, Comte to talk about some small-scale ideas for incorporating trees into planning. People often ask me why, as an urban planner, I'm so passionate about trees. And while I think there are a whole lot of reasons, which we'll touch briefly on later, I think the biggest thing for me is that we, as urban planners, are long-range thinkers. And to me, planting a tree is an act of long-range thinking. The trees I planted this year in Allison Brook Park are probably going to outlast the drive-through coffee shop that I just permitted on the edge of town. And I think have a more beneficial impact on the community. If we're really thinking about what our community looks like 10 to 20 years from now, then we really need to be thinking about trees. Not only about those buildings and roads in our community, but how these trees shape our neighborhoods. And I think these next slides demonstrate a little bit of what we're talking about. Which of these neighborhoods do you want to live in? Which of these neighborhoods do you think has less crime? Which of these parks has more visitors? All of these things have to do with trees. Before I get too far into my presentation, I want to turn the microphone over to Reischl just to talk a little bit about trees and how they benefit the urban communities.
Great, you can. So hello everyone, I'm excited to be here. Like many of you, I am an arborist, but also an urban planner. I'm based in the Cincinnati area, and we work with cities of all sizes in urban forestry planning, mostly master plans across the country. But in Northern Kentucky, in the Cincinnati area, we do serve as city arborists for a number of the smaller cities that don't have an arborist or not convinced they need an arborist on staff. So as someone who works with a lot of small communities and large communities, I can tell you that there is a lot that you can do with small budgets. So one of the things, we're always making it a priority anytime we get a chance to convey the full roles trees play in a community. I'm not going to go over this with you today because now knowing who's attending this event, you all know this backwards and forwards. So we have the list of benefits here. I will mention, though, that we talk about stormwater interception and heat reduction and air quality when we talk about benefits, but it boils down to public health. And this is a message that the public will take note of instead of trees provide air. Like, if I cut down this tree, I'm not going to have less air. You know, that's kind of what we hear from the public. So we'll be talking more about communications in my presentation tomorrow, so making a pitch. But anyway, I'm going to scroll through this quickly. I also wanted to put these statistics in here so that if you get a copy of this presentation, you have these statistics and could use it later on. Let's see. Well, there's way more. Okay, so, but the one thing I did want to point out as far as the role trees play, and I think a lot of you know this, is that mature trees do more. We've heard this already. I do want to provide a statistic with you. A 30-inch diameter tree removes 70 times more pollutants from the air than this is actually supposed to say 3-inch diameter. I was using centimeters to inches and didn't do the conversion. So something that's 10 times larger does 70 times more. So it's not just take it out and replace it. The other thing is we do know that trees have a positive ROI and that they grow in value and benefits provided over time. So Chad's going to talk about, we're going to go through these 9 strategies for smaller communities because there is a lot you can do with a small budget.
So I think the first thing that we need to do as individuals is build awareness about trees in our community. And that starts with your own personal awareness. Notice where the trees are in your community, where the trees aren't, where they're thriving, where they're struggling, what neighborhoods have them and which don't. I love this little cartoon in the corner because I used to live on a block that only had 2 street trees. And the 3 parking spaces under those trees were the most coveted spots on the entire block. You want to build awareness for city staff and elected officials. Ask if they care about the trees in their community. Ask what the Parks Department is doing about trees. Maybe it's not much. In the case of Jeffersonville, that was the case. Not much. We remove them when we're dead. That's pretty much the answer I got. What does the street department do when a tree falls in the street? Find out who your allies are, who your detractors are. The more you know and the more they know you care about trees, the more effective you are at getting them into your community. We need to build community awareness too, not just our city staff and elected officials, but everyone in the community. That might be as simple as creating a stencil and marking the new trees that you planted in the community. Here we created a stencil and spray painted on the sidewalk next to new street trees that were planted in the community. Just a sign that we're doing something. Also, when planting with volunteers, take care to say why we're here and what are the benefits of trees so that everyone knows what they're doing and why they're doing it and why it benefits them. A couple other little quick things. Do you have a page on your city's website that talks about trees? We created a website on cityofjeff.net that has tree planting tips and tree species types. These are things that the community can use and have resources for and doesn't cost a whole lot of money. Oops, wrong direction. So here you can see this is a clip from our page. We also did a program where we created these little yard signs. We did some tree plantings in the community, put these yard signs out. It helps to build awareness within the community about the benefits of the trees that we're planting within the community.
The next strategy is setting community goals, and this can seem, okay, yeah, we'll set a goal, what's that gonna do? But I do wanna point out, in some of the communities that we worked in, one is Newport, Kentucky. This is a map of Newport. It's just outside of Cincinnati. It's actually where I live. But we serve as city arborists there. One of the things that we sat down and did right in the beginning, sit down with the public works director and the city manager and just spelled out a statement on trees. So there was a canopy assessment done by the county a few years prior. And so we knew how much canopy we had, and we knew how much we had by the 8 neighborhoods that are within Newport. So we had this heat map. So we know that the northwest area of Newport has much fewer trees and much higher heat levels in the summer. So we put together this statement. And so first one is just what we value. Like, we value the trees within the community. And as we value them, the city manager was saying, we can't commit to additional canopy. We don't even know what we're doing yet. So we said at the minimum, we want to maintain what we have, which a no net loss goal is a lofty goal. I know people don't get that excited about it, but it is a difficult goal to maintain. So we want to maintain our existing canopy at the current 33% while working to improve the quality and health of the existing canopy, while equalizing the canopy between the neighborhoods, because there were pretty stark differences. And then the public works director said, we have to have something that says something about public safety, because we often will take a tree down that's a public, as you all know, public safety issue, and people fight that. So this is something that we are able to use when we say, oh, we might be able to get grant funding for something. Oh, or why are you doing this ordinance? Oh, well, we have this city goal, and it is everywhere. It's up on our website, it's on all of our printed materials, and it really sets the foundation to, okay, these are the things that we're gonna be working on the next few years. I think, oh yeah, another one, okay. The other thing that I think is gonna be talked about today and tomorrow is getting some best practices and specifications in place. Even if it's just something you say all the time and you post to your website. This is an image on the left is from New York City. It's a very easy to absorb, here's the spacing between trees, here's the size the tree wells need to be, here's the distance from the curb or from stop signs. We can talk about soil volume and how important that is, even referencing ANSI A300 standards. To get this in place, even at the most basic level, so you're not scrambling when this big capital project's coming in and you don't have anything spelled out. So that's another quick thing that you can do. Also, tree ordinance that protects public trees. We just heard a great presentation on that. One of the things that a lot of the communities that we work with that don't have these kind of get nervous when you talk about ordinances, but at the minimum, they define who's responsible for what. It's a statement of how valuable it is and why trees are valuable. Establishes a policy for the community, sets some standards, and sets management in place. And so even at the most basic, you can put together a tree ordinance that is what you might call a starter tree ordinance that you might evolve over time, but it's important to have something in place now.
Yeah, and I think I will accentuate that. When I started at the city of Jeffersonville, we did not have a tree ordinance. And I was constantly getting calls and questions about, well, whose responsibility is this tree in the street, right? Is it the city's responsibility? Is the homeowner's responsibility? We don't know. And of course, I don't know either because there isn't an ordinance that says anything about it. So having those ordinances in place, we've since enacted an ordinance, is really important. One of the great things about being in the planner's seat is that we have a seat in the table when infrastructure is put into place in the community. So I think you see here, I had an opportunity, the redevelopment department was getting ready to repave a city parking lot. We noticed that there were no trees in this area, and consequently, there was no tree lawn to put the trees in this area. And we worked with the redevelopment team to build 2 bulb outs that we can put trees in. We also designed those bulb outs to catch some rainwater. So it's a great opportunity for us not only to add trees into the environment, but to catch some of that stormwater while we're doing it.
That was also just a conversation you had.
That was, yeah, it's just started as a conversation. Hey, can we get some more trees in here? And it basically morphed into a real design. I know that another project we had going on in the city was a large sewer replacement project where unfortunately we were losing a lot of trees. They had to rip out everything from sidewalk to sidewalk in order to do this massive sewer project. And unfortunately, on that street, the tree lawns were only about 3 feet wide. And so even though there were some street trees on that, they weren't terribly healthy street trees. And so when we went through the design process, we worked to shrink the sidewalks down to 5 feet. I think they had been like 7-foot sidewalks. We shrunk those sidewalks down to 5 feet so we can get that extra 2 feet of tree lawn in that project. And then we were actually able to line that street with a number of trees that we feel over time will be very successful. One of the most powerful tools I have in my kit is a landscape fee in lieu. There are tons of reasons why developers don't want or can't plant trees on their site. So in the past, our city's BZA, Board of Zoning Appeals, would waive the required landscaping for a developer when they couldn't plant those trees or frankly didn't want them. And we decided that that was kind of ridiculous. If they are required to put those trees in, why can't they be required to put those trees in somewhere else in the community? And so we established a fee in lieu program where developers pay in. It's approximately $250 per tree that they are not putting on their development property. And I can take that money and then plant those trees in parks and public spaces where they're more wanted. And the great thing about this fee is it's now created a pool of money that I can then leverage to get grants that may be a matching grant. I now have a pool of money that I can work with. we have a lot of development going on in Jeffersonville, and in the last year, I brought in almost $9,000 for tree planting. It's been a really amazing program for us. One of the things that's, I think, easy to do in the community is to organize a tree planting of some sort. But, you know, it's been interesting for us because I think as the city, it's hard to get volunteers out when you're the city. They're like, well, can't the city just plant the trees? Why should I get involved? But it's actually been a pretty successful way for us to help get more shade in the community. We've been working with the Girl Scout troops, with some Boy Scout troops, and we have had some luck in getting those programs together. They are a little bit difficult and take a lot of work, but they can be really successful in building awareness in the community.
Actually, just one of the things that I wanted to mention, because I know he's not going to say it, is that Chad and I met at an APA event, American Planners Association in Kentucky, and this is not part of his job. It is part of my job, and I was doing a presentation on urban forestry for the planners, and he came up to me later and said, I love trees too. And so he's doing all of this, and it is nowhere in his job description. So to have a champion like that is so valuable. And yes, the volunteer plantings might be hard for a one-man band to do, but even if you guys know, you do plantings, everyone here does plantings, but even to get 5 plantings and trees in the ground with volunteers is great. So I think he needs a little bit of credit for that.
I will say I now have a tree board, which is kind of exciting. So I'm hoping that we are able to utilize that tree board to sort of build a little bit more of a volunteer base around the community. Partnerships are really important. We can do more with a partner than we can alone. And those partnerships may be interdepartmental. I think I've got a picture here. Our fire department had an old fire truck that they donated to the Parks Department. And then the Parks Department uses it to water the trees. So we planted a tree walk very early on in my career at City of Jeffersonville. And in order to keep those trees growing, we had the Parks Department out there with the fire truck to water those trees in the hot summer months. Other partners that you might want to think about are schools, clubs, neighborhood groups, but also businesses. We have a lot of legacy industrial not developers, but industrial businesses in the community of Jeffersonville. One of the companies has been there for over 120 years. His company renders animal fats to make other products for the shoe industry and other industries. And his plant is kind of smelly, right? So, but he's been a really good steward of the community, and he donated over $10,000 to the city in order to plant trees in and around his factory, because he knows that he's making an impact on the community and wants to be a good steward. Certainly a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and I'll say too, when we were talking about IRA grants, so in Newport, we, as city arborists, applied for a grant. We got $1 million in Newport to plant 1,000 trees, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but most of it is depaving because there's so much concrete in that part of the city. And our grant was one of the ones that got canceled. So it's so disappointing. We had about a year in, and most of it was just the run-up, set-up stuff. We got a couple plants. I don't know. Don't even get me started. But I will point out that businesses did step up. I mean, they're not going to give us $1 million, but we got 10,000 here, 20,000 there as the word went out about it. So I think when we do run into those things where we're losing funding, without it getting, you can get as political as you want, but to say we had this funding and we lost it, to let people know so that these businesses can step up and potentially help you or any organization.
Yeah, another business that stepped up was a local recycling center, right? They're also eco-minded and gave us a grant to help bring Louisville Grows, a tree planting organization, over into Jeffersonville to plant trees on private properties where I can't use my fee and lieu fund, unfortunately. One of the things that we have here in Indiana that's also, I think, important is our community foundations. Every county in Indiana has a community foundation, and they all have priorities. And so if your tree planting happens to align with one of their priorities, it's a great opportunity for you to possibly get some matching grant funds for tree planting within the community. One of the other things that I think we as urban planners are good at is identifying problems within the communities and finding solutions to those problems. So as you all know, mature trees can pull up sidewalks, and especially if they weren't planted in the right place or the right time. I think you see here on the left, this is in our downtown, Jeffersonville. We planted a whole bunch of pear trees 30 years ago, unfortunately. But they were planted in 3x3 tree wells, which of course are not nearly big enough to fit those trees. We've come in and retrofitted those sidewalks. It was actually not all that expensive to come in, cut the concrete a little bit bigger, give those trees a little more room, come in and mulch those trees, and solve that problem. Because we had, like I said, like you see here, we had a lot of cracking and crumbling, and we've kind of helped to at least eliminate the problem for now. At some point in time, I want to remove all of those pear trees, although they are shading our major main street. So that's going to be a really large conversation. There's two other examples here of problems that we had. I had our sidewalk contractor come in and say, hey, I've got this sidewalk, I've got a tree here, we're rebuilding this and the tree roots are in the way. I said, you know, the sidewalk is 7 feet wide. The code says it just has to be 5 feet wide. Let's replace the sidewalk, the 7-foot sidewalk, with a short section of 5-foot sidewalk in order to save that tree. Not only did it save us money in concrete, but we also got to save that tree. The picture below is another interesting case where, again, we have these really narrow tree lawns in Jeffersonville for some reason, and these tulip poplars got planted here. The property owner was replacing his sidewalk. He didn't want to lose these trees, but was willing to allow us to move the sidewalk ever so slightly onto his property so that we could get around those trees. I think, as Reischl said, mature trees do more, right? So if we can save these trees in our urban environments, that's even more important, I think, than planting new ones. Anything else you want to add, Reischl?
No. Well, tomorrow, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Reischl and Chad, for that awesome presentation. Yeah, I think the more we can get planners in the room to talk about trees, the better, and a lot of that is collaboration. Okay, so next we are moving on to the final, lost my mouse there, final presentation in our tree preservation section here. And so for our final presentation, oh yes, I didn't see you in the crowd. I was like, well, I guess I hope he's here. So we're going to be hearing from a different division of DNR, Division of Entomology and Plant Pathology, about new and emerging pests and diseases to be aware of in the urban landscape. So we're welcoming Will Drews, who is a nursery inspector and compliance officer for DNR, Division of Entomology and Plant Pathology. He serves a 7-county area, so if you're in South Central Indiana, including Brown County, Clay, Greene, Lawrence, Martin, Monroe, and Owen counties, he serves your county, and if you have pests and disease, well, I'll let him talk about that. But he's been in his position for just over 2 years. Previously, he was with Knox County Soil and Water Conservation District, where he helped coordinate the Knox County SISMA, which is awesome. He has a bachelor's degree in biology from Wabash College and a master's degree in environmental science from IU Bloomington, and is a certified pesticide applicator in categories 2, 3A, and 6, which are forest pests, ornamental pests, and industrial weed management. So let's welcome Will. Left, right, and then this is the pointer.
Okay, I'll try pointer. All right, thanks, Rachel, and thanks everyone for being here today. So my name is Will Drews. I'm with another division of DNR, the Division of Entomology and Plant Pathology. I'm a nursery inspector and compliance officer, and I'm here to talk to you about new and emerging pests and diseases in Indiana, which unfortunately all are from around this area, basically right where we are here today, but potentially elsewhere too. For those that don't know us, I know probably for this group, you all know the Division of Forestry, but the Division of Entomology and Plant Pathology, just a quick overview. We're around to manage plant pests for the preservation and protection of Indiana's cultivated and natural resources. We help facilitate trade and enhance the quality of our environments. We, fun fact, are one of the older divisions in DNR. And our big thing that we do is we do all the nursery grower and dealer inspections for the state. So if you buy plant stock, including trees in Indiana, we're the ones that inspect them to hopefully prevent any pests and disease issues before they arrive to you in the landscape. We also do some apiary inspections. We do phytosanitary inspections. If we are also the ones that are in charge of the firewood permits. So if you go into a state park property, state forest, wood that enters that has to be permitted, and it's designed to reduce, well, emerald ash borer originally, but other invasive pests as well. We do other pest surveys and have some special control programs for pests such as spongy moth, spotted lanternfly, hemlock woolly adelgid, and kudzu. I'm sure all of you, if you do know us, you think of us as the people that you report spotted lanternfly to. I'm going to save you from that talk. We aren't going to talk about that today because hopefully you already know about spotted lanternfly. And unfortunately, if it's not in your community, it is coming. The quick, very brief update is that in the new big municipalities that now have spotted lanternfly, include Gary, Lafayette, and Indianapolis. So it's here. We're working to suppress it, but that's a different talk. You can't really see it, but my pointer, these are our inspector territories. If you are in the far south area, actually, my colleague Eric Bittner is the one that you can talk to, who's here. Wave, Eric. Thanks, Eric. All right, so we'll just get into it. My brief talk outline, I'm just going to talk to you about 3 pests today, 2 insects, elongate hemlock scale and elm zigzag sawfly, as well as a new forest pathogen, hornbeam rust. And hopefully we'll get through it and still get you out for a break too. Okay, so I'll start off with elongate hemlock scale, or Fiorini externa. This is a non-native invasive scale insect species that originated in Japan and China, and can be found on any coniferous tree host. However, it does prefer hemlocks, as its hemlock name implies, or Tsuga species, as well as spruces, Picea species, and true firs or abies, but can be found on other conifers as well. This species was first detected in the United States in New York around 1908. Its introduction was presumed to have arrived on infested stock from Asia. And it has been spreading since there. This is something that we've been intercepting in Indiana for a while now. I'd say consistently over the past 5 years on holiday greenery. So what that means is all the nice decorations, such as some of the ones that may be adorning the table centerpieces, a lot of that stock, especially if you find it in a bigger box store, I won't name any names, but you all know who they are, potentially has gotten that stock from a distribution center, and a lot of it comes from North Carolina, and I'll show you a map, but that is where we seem to find it. However, we have also found it in the landscape too, including one detection here in Bloomington as well. So for some of you that may be not necessarily very well versed in scale biology, this is not going to be like a common scale pest that you probably all see, tulip tree scale in the landscape, which really affects tulip poplars heavily, and you can find that on a lot of urban trees if they're stressed. That's a soft scale species, which means that it's related, but it feeds in a different part of the plant tissue and thus exudes a lot of honeydew, which causes that black sooty mold that covers everything. This is a separate class of scale species called armored scales. And so you aren't going to be able to look for the presence of honeydew in order to find this pest. What you're going to look for is armored scales actually pierce in deeper into the tissue of the plant material. And so what you'll see with them is, if my pointer can work, that discoloration of the foliage. So in here, in this center picture, you should be able to see there's that yellowing. It kind of looks like bands or even spots. That's where it corresponds to a lot of insects on the underside that are sucking that tissue. And it can look pretty gross. I mean, you can see on the left-hand side that kind of the elongate scale, those are the females where it's most characteristic. But on the right there, you can see it kind of looks like this white speckled underside of the foliage. That's all elongate hemlock scales underneath there. Okay, so here's a range map. It's not great, but it's the best we have for like a national look at this pest of where it is. This was a map from the U.S. Forest Service circa around 2019 with elongate hemlock scales distribution in the United States. And you can see we first detected it in New York. New York is covered now. It's spread to a lot of the northeastern states as well as down, including North Carolina, where we often find shipments of plants with it, but even Ohio. So it was a matter of time, but we do think it is here as well. Okay, so some of the life cycle kind of interesting biology facts about elongate hemlock scale is that it can have up to two generations per year. It emerges in late May, early June, and kind of is active until frost. So a long period of time there, because it's on an evergreen host. It goes past fall. It really goes until conditions are too cold for it to be active. However, it can resurface in winter months, especially we're here in southern Indiana. We do have winter days where occasionally it pops up to 50 degrees. Elongate hemlock scale can become active on those days as well. All life cycles can appear at the exact same time on the plants, and all the photos I'm showing you are where you can see that. So in the pink here on the left is the females. You can see them there, what give it the name elongate hemlock scale. They kind of have the elongated brown, light brownish to brown color to them. I think they kind of look oddly like fingernails. But because what you can see is you see the actual scale body as the darker brown, and then the cover extends past it. There are also males that you can see in the blue circles up top right there. Those are going to be, if you do know some armored scales, they look like characteristic armor scales where you have the body, which is kind of that lightish brown color, and then a waxy tail to them for their covering. And then on the bottom right, you can see a crawler there as well, very small, yellowish, and that's really the only the life stage that moves. So with this pest, there is some control options on small trees. You could get away with controlling with horticultural oil sprays if you're able to access underneath the leaves and can get full coverage. Otherwise, basically, if you have a large or mature tree, the only method that really works in that case is a trunk or soil injection, and its recommended product would be dinotefuran for that. And control for this species is going to be best when applied in either late May or early June when that first generation appears. And in fact, if you can time it where if you know the growing degree days, if you actually apply soil injection right before they emerge, that's even better yet. Okay, we'll just move on right to our next invasive insect pest. This is elm zigzag sawfly, or a Procero leucopodia. This is another non-native invasive insect species that originated in East Asia. Now, this one has a little bit of a more interesting invasion curve. We don't exactly know how this got to the U.S., and it had already, by the time it got here, it had already invaded all of Europe. It's been invading Europe since about 2003. And so actually we're unsure if the populations that we now have in the United States originated secondarily from the Europe population or came as another primary introduction from Asia. That's unknown right now. But what is known is that this will affect elms. Both native and introduced species. So Ulma species, it doesn't seem like there is any resistant variety yet. So all hybrids, as well as varieties and species, including American elm, red or slippery elm, winged elm, Siberian elm, and potentially even Japanese Zelkova too, which is another common street tree, non-native though. But we recently detected this in Indiana, unfortunately, here last year in 2025 on some trees that were planted as part of a development project. One of the easiest things or fastest things to look out for this species is going to be the zigzags right there on the leaf pattern. You can't confirm its presence from that, but that's a good indication that it's probably there in your community and for you to potentially look closer. There is, if you can, the larva is easy to diagnose. So right there to the left of that, it has some characteristics I'll talk about in a second, as well as it does create an interesting netted cocoon during the summer months, which you can find on the undersides of the leaves, which is below that right there. Now, we haven't actually collected an adult yet for our population, but it would be right there on the left. The adults, sawflies are very hard to ID. If you've ever tried to dive into entomology and look into a specific species, all of them almost look the same. One slight unique thing about this species, and it's indicated by the scientific name, that leucopoda, that means kind of light-colored feet. And as you can see on the adult, most likely a female right there, those light-colored legs and feet, that's partially a good, not diagnostic characteristic, but a good indication that it could likely be elm zigzag sawfly. That plus, if you find it on elm, it probably is. Okay, this is not the most current map, but it's pretty close, and we'll go over everything else. But this is from 2023, a range map of elm zigzag sawfly in the United States, in its North American introduction. So this one was actually detected initially in North America in Canada in 2020. And it was first detected in the United States in Virginia in 2021. And it has, so we're talking in the United States 4 years ago, it spread rapidly in that amount of time, where, as you can see now, most of New York's covered, a lot of The northeastern states have it, and it is continuing to spread westward very rapidly with what I like to call kind of hotspot invasions, where they kind of pop up or flare up really far away from any initial other infestation. So in 2024, it was detected in both Wisconsin and Minnesota, almost around the same time. And that kind of had our blinders up to be like, oh, we need to be looking for this. And we had spotted some potential signs of it over the past couple years, but finally confirmed it here this past year in Indiana as well. Okay, some of the characteristics about it, if you can, the easiest thing to look for is to look for that zigzag sawfly pattern, feeding pattern that's going to be on the leaves, starting from the outside, working its way in. You can't confirm it by that, but that's a good way to at least know that it's likely in your area. And then the best thing is if you can find a larva that does have diagnostic characteristics that you can use. This particular sawfly larva has a dark band that goes across the eye and around the entire head, which you can see right there, as well as interesting T shapes in the second and third thoracic leg right here. And that's unique to this species. But basically, if you're finding it causing zigzags on an elm leaf, just send it in and let us know. So this pest, one of the interesting things about it is it can have a lot of generations per year. So it's been studied shown to potentially have up to 6, which is a lot for an insect. That's basically one generation after another, as conditions are good, favorable. It emerges in spring. North Carolina has it emerging, which has been doing the most of the research in the U.S., has it emerging around mid-April. So if you're in southern Indiana, mid-April is probably a good time to start looking for it on elm. But probably, if you're talking northern Indiana, more like late April to early May would be where it would probably start to be active. And it's active spring through fall. So it's active until the elms drop their leaves in the fall. You can find locations where eggs have been laid, but you probably are not going to find actual eggs. Circled in red is an egg location. It's a very small little bump at the edge of a tooth of an elm leaf. So very, very small. You can, however, find where they have exited because you can see there's actually a slit right there where the larva emerges. The adults actually lay the eggs inside the leaves. The eggs, when they hatch, they kind of eat out and create that slit and then start feeding from the edge in. Throughout the summer, it will pupate and it creates these interesting netted cocoon structures like this on the underside of the leaves, generally, but it can also lay them on branches, on the trunk, and it's been shown they found it being laid on inanimate objects. So that is one of the ways that is presumed for its long-range spread is potentially pupal cases being laid on a car that moves from one area to the next during summer months. One thing that I did not mention, but I'll mention it now, is it just takes a single adult to create a new population, unfortunately. They are all females and they are all parthenogenic. So that adds to the challenge and why it's probably been spreading as rapidly as it has been. During this time, they are overwintering. They're dormant as pupa. They lay actually a different, or they spin a different cocoon this time of year that's thicker, more insulated, kind of more like if you know the moths that lay overwintering pupal case cocoons at this time of year. It's going to be that thicker netted thing that's going to be hiding in leaf litter, and they'll wait out the winter there. So one of the good things is that there are a lot of products that are available for sawfly control, including horticultural oil sprays, Pyrephrins, spinosad, or pyrethroids, such as bifenthrin or permethrin, which are both very common and easy to use. The bad news is there's not been a lot of research yet to show efficacy of these products. What little has been done has shown that pyrethroids do work very well, both as a you could use it as a foliar spray, but as a soil injection as well on the larger trees. And then there's also, it looks like spinosad also works well as a foliar application on small individuals. But yeah, I also have a demo that shows kind of the some of the life cycles, the zigzag pattern, cocoon, and larva that I'll put up at the front desk if anyone wants to check that out later. Okay, and finally, I think I still have some time. Okay, great. Thanks, Rachel. I'll talk about hornbeam rust, a new novel non-native rust species that we recently detected in Indiana as well. Melamsporidium asiaticum. This is, as its scientific name implies, it originated from Asia and kind of has been spreading over the southeastern US for the last 5 years, but has been working its way into now the Midwest and is starting to spread even further west. And I'll get into that. This is a species that has the ability to affect urban trees because a lot of the smaller trees that are planted in urban environments, such as American hornbeam, European hornbeam, and hop hornbeam, are all susceptible to this rust. Like rust species, it creates a rust-colored pustules on the undersides of the leaves, more yellowish-colored spores. But one of the indications you can see above is there's going to be some yellowing, like it looks like little yellow dots initially on the upper side of the leaves that develop in summer. And then later summer, it kind of develops more into full-on yellow, like premature fall color. And you can see that in this photo right there. If you want to look for it closely, that's a good time, or quickly, late summer, looking at the tops of the leaves. So here's the known distribution map for hornbeam rust in the United States, based on the only scientific publication on this species in North America, plus our data as well as the Missouri Department of Agriculture. So this was detected initially in Florida in 2018, and the study kind of initially begun in 2019, and when they were looking for it, they found it in a lot of other states, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas. We detected it in the end of 2024, unfortunately nearby here in Owen County. And Missouri just detected it this past year as well. So it's spreading. Okay, Mary, sorry. We are getting there. Okay, so one of the interesting things or difficult things about rust species is that they can have very complex life cycles and can have some interesting switching between hosts. So a lot of you are probably very familiar with a very common rust that's found, well, everywhere in Indiana, cedar apple rust. And it's a great example of a heteroecious rust species and its ability to alternate between two very different plant families over the course of its life cycle. So with the example of cedar apple rust, what it does is it spends part of its year, its acial host is going to be on rosaceous species such as apple trees, primarily, but its relatives, serviceberries, etc., and then alternates to its teleal host, the cedars or juniperous species. And there are other species in this genre of rust, including birch rust, which some of you in northern Indiana might deal with, that alternates between two hosts, birch and larch species. But we don't know. The short answer is we don't know yet with this specific species of rust. In fact, only one life stage has been observed so far, and that is the Uridinea stage and the Uridinospores. That's what we're observing right here, the Uridina, and then its spores, those yellowish things, and that's it. So there could be also another teleal stage, and there could be also an alternate host that we are unaware of so far. But what we do know, and this was novel in the discovery of this, is that most of these rust species just affect leaves. This rust species has been shown to also infect the samaras of the host trees as well, which was an interesting new thing that was discovered with this particular species. So it could just be that it's breaking the traditional rules and doing its own thing too. Okay, bad news is control is going to be very difficult with this. Rust can spread, well, they do spread via the wind and can spread large distances quickly. So it's going to be hard to really contain this. Fungicides are not going to be probably impractical and not effective once you already see the rust. Potentially they could be used as a preventive measure, but most likely if you do find a single one and you think it's an interception, basically the only thing that you can do effectively to control it would be to burn the affected stalk right there and then. Okay, so I'll end with some resources. If you potentially find any of these species or something similar or another species altogether that you think is unique and novel and could be potentially an issue, feel free to contact us using the above Find Your Nursery Inspector online, or we have a hotline, depp@dnr.in.gov, or a call hotline if you would rather call someone. We do have 866-NO-EXOTIC. We do also have a weekly review during the growing season where we share articles, each inspector, on things that we're finding. And if you subscribe to ours, you may already be aware of a couple of these things because we posted about them there. Another resource, if you aren't plugged in yet, the Purdue Plant and Pest Diagnostic Lab is a great resource for specifically confirming pests with hornbeam rust. In particular, a lot of diseases we can't officially confirm unless they have been officially diagnosed by a licensed diagnostic lab, and Purdue has that for us in Indiana. But if all of that, you're like, I don't like any of those options, I use other things, we will check. I mean, EdMaps is a great resource. If you're already plugged in there, you can put reports there and we will find them eventually, as well as iNaturalist, though that's even less preferred, but we will find it. Just report it, I guess, is the main thing. And with that, I don't know if I have questions, but there's my contact information, and yeah, thank you for your time.
Okay. So we're moving on to nursery logistics and issues. Starting off by learning some tips and tricks for selecting trees at the nursery from Kyle Daniel, Nursery and Landscape Specialist at Purdue University. What?
That's plenty.
That's plenty?
That's plenty.
Okay, Kyle doesn't want me to read his full bio, so if you want to see his full bio, you can read it in the link I gave you. Okay, take it away, Kyle.
Thank you, Rachel. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to apologize about my plant material that I have up here. I probably should have got it from the farm yesterday instead of this morning. Everything is quite frozen, so I'll show you as we go along. So as Rachel said, I'm the nursery and landscape specialist up at Purdue. I teach a couple of classes along with my extension appointment. And these are all pictures from this semester and some of the things that our students are doing with pruning street trees with Jenny, She is here demonstrating how to put on some guards at the West Lafayette Municipal Nursery. If you want to know more about that, raise your hand, Jenny. She can talk to you about starting a nursery at a municipality. And then this lab up here in the top left-hand corner, the plants that we use, I brought a few of them today to show you. One of the things that I've tried to do is to take some of these things that we're talking about theoretically in the classroom and allow the students to get their hands on some things. And I just told Rick Haggard a while ago that I always get nervous because I plant all these trees and put them in different containers and we do a root lab, and I get nervous because they're supposed to look a certain way, and with biology you don't always 100% know, but thankfully everything looked pretty good today. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit, I'll be a little quicker so that we can get to the panel discussion this afternoon, about the importance of selecting quality nursery stock, some things to think about. We're going to talk a lot about roots and the importance of those coming out of the nursery, talk about some different production type systems, and then we'll finish up. So, what common problems do you guys typically see when you're buying nursery stock? Raise your hand. Girdling roots. What else? Codominant stems. Too deep. All right, so I read your mind before I came in here today, okay? These two things are by far the most common complaints that we get. And with this picture up here on the top left-hand corner, almost all of our B&B stock is going to be a little bit too deep. There's several reasons behind that. Number one, there's a nursery here in Indiana. It's one of the best examples of bulb and burlap stock being planted too deep. They tried to get away from herbicides to reduce their pesticide usage, so they started doing cultivation to control the weeds. Well, what complaints do you think they got whenever they drove up and down the rows and constantly turned that soil over? You're just basically burying that thing too deep. And so that's one of the big reasons that you'll see some of this stock that's being planted too deep. Other reasons, maybe you don't want to stake the tree, so they're planted a little deeper to hold them in place. And then with girdling roots, this is a problem with container stock, and I'm going to show y'all some ways. If anybody's been in a nursery in the last several years, the amount of containers that are out there now and the different types of containers is almost mind-blowing. For the longest time, we just had the root maker. That was kind of the first of the air pruning pots. And so I'm going to show y'all some different types of pots that you might see. So why do we worry about selecting high-quality nursery stock? At the end of the day, we want these trees to live as long as possible. And so by getting a quality plant from day one, you're helping to ensure some of that. Transplant shock, every plant that you put in the ground is going to have some transplant shock. It's just the nature of plants going from one environment to another. If you have a really healthy tree that you're putting from the nursery out into the landscape, you're going to greatly reduce some of that transplant shock. Tree failure, what is the average lifespan of a downtown urban tree? So downtown urban tree, U.S. Forest Service, about 10 years is what they say. And so we need to get these things off to a good start. More rapid transplant success. So, the higher quality plants that you're putting in the ground, the more roots, the more fibrous root system that you can have on there, the quicker those things are going to take off and not have that transplant shock. And at the end of the day, happier clients, whether you work for a municipality, arborist, landscaper, whatever the case may be, at the end of the day, that's what's really important. And so I have a couple of videos that I wanted to show. We'll be really quick on them just to give you, these are some larger scale nursery. This is from J. Frank Schmidt out in Oregon. This is how they pot up their containers on this carousel. You have the media coming down. We try to get, as many of these going as we can. Different nurseries have different systems. You can see, well, it's probably hard to see with that sun there. These have been pruned a lot on the root system there with these bare root stock. So we try to automate as much as we can. It's really, really difficult in the nursery industry to do much automation because it's so much manual labor there. Greenhouses, you know, they're pretty technologically advanced for the most part, but for nurseries, it's still a lot of manual labor. All right, so selecting nursery stock. I have a QR code up here. This is a publication that Ed Gilman from the University of Florida put together several years ago. That QR code will take you to this publication. There's a ton of really great information in there, but when you read that, I want you to remember this is in Florida and not Indiana. And so there are going to be some differences there, but just in general, trying to find high quality nursery stock, he does a really good job with that publication. I inherited this slide. Does anybody remember Mike Dana from Purdue? This was a really simple drawing that makes a lot of sense. If you want to see how well rooted a tree is in the container, because sometimes if things have just been potted up, the whole root system is going to flip right over. So this is a really quick way as you're getting trees in to make sure that they're well rooted in. All right, so now I want to talk to y'all a little bit about some of the different production systems that we have with containers, with field production. I'm going to give a talk in the morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about planting and some of the differences between container and ball and burlap trees whenever I give that talk. So this is a really common system that's been around for a number of years that a lot of folks are still using with a pot and pot system. Basically, you're getting kind of the best of both worlds from a grower standpoint of growing in the field. You can grow larger, mature trees. You don't have to overwinter them. They can overwinter right in the field there. You essentially have a growing pot and a socket pot. So the trees growing in that growing pot sits down inside of that socket pot. One of the big, issues with the pot and pot system is highly aggressive roots on trees, sycamores, birch, things like that. They tend to find the holes in those pots. And so one easy way to take care of that is just to rotate those pots a couple of times a year and you break those root systems up. Some of the advantages of this type of system, you can harvest these year round, with balled and burlap with some of our larger trees. We have the digging season, right? Early spring, late fall. With this type of system, you can harvest those year round. Don't have to overwinter them. They're in the ground, so those roots are insulated. You're not using as much water because those pots don't get quite as hot. You can really increase your production time. You might know what soil mining is. So every time you've ever bought a balled and burlap tree, you've bought somebody's farm. And so with this type of system, you're preventing the loss of some of that topsoil there. And then some of the disadvantages are the high insulation cost, some of the problems that we deal with, and weed control is really important. All right, so girdling roots, that's a major issue that I hear, especially arborists. I like to say I take care of the babies and then pass them off to the tree folks that are growing them out there. And so I get a lot of the questions with those. So just an idea of the prevalence of some of these girdling roots. I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, I know, but there was a study back in the late 90s. There was a storm that came through in Minnesota, and they looked at some of the trees that failed during some of that, and they found that 80% of those trees that were in decline and had actually failed had these stem girdling pressure points or girdling roots on there. Ed Gilman down at Florida, he has some really cool YouTube videos. So hurricanes are a major problem down that way. And he has some YouTube videos where he got basically a big jet fan, and he put trees that had girdling roots and some of these pressure points on there. And it was amazing. The ones that didn't have those pressure points would bend over and pop right back up. The ones that had those pressure points would just fall straight over. And we see that time and time again. This was at our research farm whenever I first came to Purdue. These were 3-gallon trees, and you can see what root manipulations were done whenever they installed them. It literally, I think you could almost set that right back down in that pot. And so this is the pressure point that I was talking about a while ago. This is what can happen with those girdling roots. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk to y'all about is some of the ways that we're getting around some of these girdling roots. One way is copper treated pots. So there's a couple of different products that are out there. They can either be painted into the pot, or they have inserts that actually sit down in the pot. And what happens is that root system hits that copper. So you have your root hair hit that copper. It will die. The meristematic tissue, the actively dividing cells will die. And then back behind there, you'll get a proliferation of root growth. And so it looks like the control has way more roots than the spin out and maybe the root right too. But in all actuality, the spin out has more roots. It's just the roots are on the inside, they're not on the outside. And so after we get finished, I'll leave all these up here so that y'all in the back can come see this, but just show you a couple of different products that are out there. So again, there's tons and tons of these air pruning pots, fabric bags. This is one type of fabric bag right here. And this bag, you can see this one's being used a lot these days. And I wanted to show you, can y'all still hear me in the back okay? Okay. So this came out of a traditional plastic pot here. And again, these were frozen and still are frozen, so they're not as good of exhibits as I would like. But for y'all up front, you can kind of see roots, growing all along this edge here. But then whenever, is this okay, Rachel? She was not happy that I used her compost bucket. But this is great compost, right? And so you can see here on the inside of this, there's not many roots at all right on the inside. Most of those roots are on the outside. And so if we compare that to the one that I took out of this fabric bag here, you don't see hardly any roots here on the outside of this. And it's the same concept as in the copper treated pots. Whenever that root hair goes out and hits that air, it'll desiccate, and then back behind there, you'll have a proliferation of roots. And this one is really frozen, so I'm not going to be able to dig into that. But trust me, there are roots on the inside of that. And then they actually make them now all the way from, germination stage, very, very small pots. And so this one here came out of this pot. You can see all those holes that are in there. And so the only place you'll see roots on the outside are where it's solid. So everywhere on there that has the hose, you will not see any roots. You compare that to a traditional hard-sided container there, and there's roots all over the outside of that. And again, there's very, very few roots whenever you dig into the middle of it. And so whenever you're looking at getting some of these plants from the nursery, and, traditionally we'll pull them up, make sure they have a nice root system. If you get some of these air pruning pots or fabric bags, you may pull it out and say, this has no roots in it whatsoever. But whenever you open it up, there are lots of roots there in the middle of it. These are just some of the products that you'll see out on the market. Again, it blows my mind of how many different products are out there where, 15, 20 years ago, we only had one or two. And so just an example here. So this was looking at a closed intact design on the bottom. So it would be in something like this where it would be closed. The two on the left had that closed bottom. The two on the right had that open bottom. And so on this one in particular, all those roots will desiccate that are coming out of the bottom there. And look how many more roots you get on those two just by having that open bottom and starting them out when they're really young. Some other products that you might see out there, I mean, that's a heck of a root system for a tree that small. These are some pics from some of our class labs whenever we're doing some of these air pruning pots. Whenever they cleaned off all the roots, you could see maybe on the outside of that root ball, there was hardly any roots, but once you get on the inside, there's quite a few there. And you can still get root deformities. I mean, no matter what you're growing in. I mean, biology is strange because, you know, there's not anything that's going to be 100%. So this is a really good illustration here. Almost no roots on the outside, all the roots on the outside. So whenever you are buying these trees from air pruning pots, from fabric bags or whatever, I just want to make you aware that when you pull those out, you may not see a ton of roots on the outside, but that's actually a good thing. So So when those roots try to grow out of that fabric bag, they'll desiccate because there's no moisture there. And so you're essentially killing off that meristematic tissue. There's no moisture there. Yep. I mean, I guess in Florida, it's, you know, so humid, I guess you might have some roots grow out of there. And so I'm going to go through this, but I might address this a little bit more tomorrow morning about what happens whenever we do some of these root prunings whenever we're transplanting these into the landscape. Got one more video here. And this is very similar. This is a Bailey Nurseries up in Oregon. But most of our larger nurseries, you know, here in the Midwest have some type of similar pot production system is what we're seeing here. All right, so whenever we're going out and actually, you know, looking at the stock, you know, this looks like a nice crab apple. I mean, if you just glanced at it, you might say, hey, that's a great tree. I'm going to grab that tree and buy that tree. But whenever you really start to look a little bit closer, you know, you're essentially taking that's cedar quince rust out into the landscape. So if you see this, you know, sometimes whenever bulb and burlap trees don't get sold, you know, they can sit there for a while. You know, they are probably fine. You just need to be a little bit more aware of what to look for. And the main thing is the annual growth. So the internode length. So if you look at your buds and you see this much growth, this much growth, this much growth, and then maybe this much growth, you know that this past growing year, there was some type of stress. And so by looking at that internode length on plants like that, you can tell how many years essentially that plant was stressed out. And so kind of the take-home message for all this, be sure to take into account the production systems that you're buying your plants from. Okay, so, you know, straight containers, these are perfectly fine, but just know when you're planting a tree out of a container like this that you need to prune 1 inch around the side of this pot, of that root ball there, or else those roots, like the one picture I showed you, are going to continue to circle. And so just because they're in this doesn't mean, they're bad. It just means that you need to do a little bit of extra work whenever you're going to transplant those. Look for that yearly growth. Of course, any type of disease or any kind of stress that you can see on there, take a look at those roots. Roots are just so important. Multiple leaders or codominant stems, try to avoid those. Again, we can correct that whenever we plant those into the landscape. If it does have the codominant stem, we can prune that at that point in time and the tree will be totally fine. And then also take into account, what species you're putting in, the time of year, and then very much the site conditions. So I wanted to end with, some of y'all have seen this a million times, and I apologize, but I think there's some folks in here that probably haven't seen this. These are free resources, the Purdue Plant Doctor. I'll go through this real quick so you can select, trees, shrubs, whatever. Picture of the actual species, and then you click whatever problem you're seeing, whether it's leaves, needles, plant branches, fruit, etc. Then you click on that, and then whenever you finally get to the problem that you see, there is the life cycle of the disease or the pest, management recommendations, all that. And so all of the trees that we use in urban areas are going to be on this website here. And then the Purdue Landscape Report we send out every 2 weeks. We got diagnosticians, entomologists, pathologists, urban foresters that write articles in here, basically what we're seeing throughout the growing season. And so for both of those, you can click that QR code right there. That will take you to the landscape report, which has a link to the plant doctor on there for you to take a look at. And there's the cutest little boy that you'll ever see. I might be a little bit biased there. But whenever possible, I try to have him help me in the field do things because he loves that. So with that, I'd like to invite the panelists up here to talk about trees. So, yeah.